Hey MJ traders and investors, it's Rod with Powell Group. Welcome back on the Pursuit of Wealth for an MJ Sector review. Today's review for Wednesday, May 26th. And in today's video, we're going to be discussing the potential of a massive rally that we have potentially forming. And we had some extremely bullish news articles that came out over the last few days. So we're going to cover some news and events, and then we'll look at the Canadian and the US MJ sectors and some charting. But before we jump in, make sure to smash the like and subscribe to the channel. I'll also put some timestamps in the description below. But before we get started, just want to go over the video that I just posted on the broader market. So this was on BlackBerry. We saw BlackBerry was running today, GME, AMC. The last time all of those ran, we saw SNDL, which was up the most in terms of MJ today on my watch list. So we're starting to see those heavily shorted names and momentum start to flow back into those names. So I'm expecting a huge bounce. And the last time that happened, we saw hundreds and hundreds of percentage gains in terms of MJ. And that was all off the backdrop of US legalization. And we're starting to see more and more rhetoric and narrative regarding that. And I think that we could be in store, we could be due for a huge rally, unlike anything we've ever seen. Let me know in the comments below if you think MJ stocks are about to pop. So federal MJ legalization bill coming this week, says the MJ Moment website. So you can check that out. I'm sure you've probably already seen it, but we could expect further progress on Congress and whether or not that bill is going to come this week. I'm skeptical, but regardless, the prospect of legalization and just overall MJ reform is extremely high. And again, article after article, it's time for Washington to get serious about federal MJ policy. This is from MJ Biz Daily. We also had 420 Intel, the MJ industry expected to add $92 billion to the US economy in 2021. Also saw a stat today saying that it's going to take about 18 months for the US job and labor market to recover from current levels. So what would help better than the MJ legalization? That's going to create hundreds of thousands of jobs, if not millions of jobs across the United States and across the globe. So expected to reach 92 billion, but up more than 30% from last year and upwards of 160 billion in 2025. We're talking over $250 million per annum in the MJ space. That is going to be massive. And if companies can just gain, a small percentage of that, we know there's probably going to be 3 to 5 major companies that lead the entire space. So if they can even get 5-10% of that, that is going to be massive money. We also saw that legal MJ states have generated nearly $8 billion in tax revenue since recreational sales launch, report finds. So more and more data supporting this this overall movement. And I do think that the US government is going to see this as a job opportunity. And I think that we're in store for a massive rally. We also had Valens taking it on the chin today after they had news raising 40 million selling unit at 330. So stock hit, I think 303 as the low today. Also, Aurora has, I try not to say that word because the algorithm doesn't like it, but Aurora shares make debut on NASDAQ after firm departs from the NYSE. And the reason behind that is just because the NYSE has a little bit more stricter policies with regards to staying listed. And with Aurora stock being basically garbage, they're under a lot of de-risking opportunities. And apologies if you're a Aurora shareholder, but I could not dislike any other MJ company any more than I dislike Aurora. So taking a look at SNDL, we had a massive day today, massive volume, the most since March 15th. And we saw a daily uptrend confirmed here with the low, high, higher low, and higher high. It wasn't a huge pullback or a clear pivot, but if you wanted to confirm that, to say that was a daily uptrend, I wouldn't argue. But if we zoom out to the weekly, we are bouncing on the weekly. If we can get over 89 cents and 90 cents, which is EMA 12 and EMA 26, that is going to be huge. I do think that we could see a massive rally. We've got a lack of resistance on the weekly here until $1.75. And then after that, all the way up to $3.96. So I could potentially see a massive move. And if you take a look at, if you were watching my videos, if you tuned into my videos the last few weeks, or the last week at least, I've been saying that I expect MJ to all run simultaneously, both Canadian and US, based on the charts. We saw a huge pullback on the weekly charts and monthly consolidation, huge pullback on the daily charts, and we just, we weren't seeing any love in the MJ sector, both US and Canada, even with SPY, nearing all-time highs and, nice recovery after that sell-off that we had. We haven't seen any movement in MJ, right? And now today, look what happened. The whole sector moved in tandem, barely any red out there except for BLNS, which was down over 13% today. But essentially barely any red out there, and the whole sector moved together. And it's exactly what I said. I said it's likely going to be due some sort of news piece or some sort of catalyst that's going to spark momentum across the entire space. And sure enough, it was this article right here, actually this one right here, that MJ legalization bill coming this week, I do believe is the reason why we're seeing such a massive bounce. But congrats to the SNDL bulls. I have loaded up my position and I'm still holding this. I haven't sold a single share of my SNDL, and I'll be holding this one for the foreseeable future. It's a longer term hold for me, but like I said, on the weekly chart, lack of resistance all the way up here until $1.75, and then after that $3.96. From current levels just to the first weekly resistance, we're looking at about 100% move, and then up to the recent highs and 52-week highs, we're looking at a 350+% move. So high risk, high reward, and sitting comfortably in that SNDL position now. So taking a look at the bull and bear list, we had VLNS, Love, and PCLO leading the decline today. So VLNS, like I said, had that raise at 330. We had a low of 303. Just looking for a higher low compared to 283, but likely favoring an equilibrium and tightening range. So taking a look at the bull and bear list, the bull list, SNDL, Labs, and Tilray. Tilray, massive bounce off the lows here, about 25%. Again, if you've been tuning into this channel, I mentioned that I was taking a Tilray trade off of, you guessed it, the 200-day moving average. We had the 200-day moving average at 1388. We tested it perfectly to the T, and here we go, starting that daily oversold. First time we were daily oversold since $4. You're talking about a 12 to 13x move, and we were expecting a bounce at some point, and we had daily oversold here, 200-day moving average test. And then we also, you could say we technically changed the trend here, but not a clear pivot point. I wouldn't be 100% convinced. But again, if you wanted to say that we changed the daily trend, I wouldn't argue with you. We did pull back about 8%. So we'll consider that a daily trend change for now, just based on the momentum in the sector. But we need to see follow through tomorrow. And again, massive bounce there off that 200-day moving average test, confirming as support. So congrats to the bulls there. I know there was quite a bit of people in our group that took that trade as well. So that's pretty much it for the Canadian space. Just taking a look at the after hours numbers. So Tilray up to 1674, SNDL up to 87.5 cents, Hexo up to 640, CGC up about 6 pennies as well, and Cron. So pretty much this is what we said in the group today as well. I said if we can see a strong close in MJ, well, ideally what we want to see is close at the high of the day, and we want to see run into after hours, and that will set us up for a potential gap up tomorrow. So we could see a potential gap up, and if you think that the last move was explosive in MJ stocks, what's going to happen just off the prospect, right? Just off the prospect of potential legalization. What happens when we find out it's actually going to be legalized, right? So if we went from 13 cents, 28x your money in a matter of weeks, what's really going to happen when we see US legalization? There's going to be incredible hype, and I still anticipate that the Canadian LPs will see majority of the percentage gains until we see major capital being able to access the US MSOs. So until MSOs are uplisted to the NYC and the NASDAQ, I'm not expecting massive moves into a 40 or 50% gain. I'm still expecting majority of that move to be within the MJ space in Canada because of that access to major exchanges. Another position that I have loaded up extremely, I have a huge position on MSOS as well. Extremely bullish on, I'm not really bullish on the LPs. Basically, I have SNDL, I have Hexos, my biggest position of any MJ company. It's my most bullish position. So I have Hexo basically, SNDL, a few smaller positions like TGOD, low cap names, just a smaller YOLO position, but I do think that a couple of those could be buyout targets. But focusing on Hexo, as I believe that has the most growth, and personally it's my favorite LP. Let me know in the comments below what your favorite LP is. There's not a whole lot to choose from because they're not too great in terms of profitability. But as we know, we have only 35 million people in Canada versus the 300 plus million in the United States. So you're not really comparing apples to apples. You're comparing apples to oranges, but still, nonetheless, we still see LP struggling in terms of profitability. But Hexo already achieved EBITDA positive and on way to EPS positive. And Hexo also has earnings coming up here in about a month. So going to be extremely interested in that. But MSOS, aside from Hexo, I'm extremely bullish on the US MJ space. And MSOS is an ETF that tracks all of the major US MSOs and companies in the United States. So that's my biggest position. I've got Cura, BAM, a few other companies as well, but MSOS being my biggest position at the moment. And we're currently just tightening up in this equilibrium pattern. And you can see on the weekly chart, it is a weekly inside bar. We had resistance at 4107. We got as high as 4117. So we did break that weekly inside bar bullish. So it's entirely possible that the weekly bounce is getting underway after holding EMA 26 here on the weekly. We didn't close below it, and it's starting to look like we could potentially be seeing a reversal across the entire space. And I don't know about you, but let me know in the comments below if you can feel a massive rally starting to brew. And I can feel it. I can feel it in the air tonight. So BioHarvest, KBev, and TAT led the decline today. Again, not a whole lot of red, and just went exactly perfect with my thesis being that we wouldn't see a whole lot of movement in any particular MJ stock until we see the whole sector, not just Canada, not just US, but the whole Canada and US sector together. And that's exactly what we saw today. We saw BlackBerry, GME, and AMC, all of those, and SNDL, all of those heavily shorted names on Wall Street bets, and all these, massive short squeeze names that are targets. And we're starting to see that come back to life and gaining momentum. So personally, I think that there's a lot more greener days ahead for the MJ space. It's going to be a green rush like you wouldn't believe. You think the gold rush was massive. All I got to say is just wait. You think that you're late to the party because, Tilray or MSOS just hit all-time highs. For example, Tilray just hit $67. So if you think you're late to the party, now's your chance, because if you thought that was a massive, and again, this isn't financial, advice, this is for entertainment and educational purposes only. But if you thought that was a massive move, you just sit back and kick your feet up and just you wait until we see the hype from US MJ legalization. Some of the names and some of the LPs in Canada ran thousands and thousands of percent after the hype of legalization. And that's just in Canada. US is going to be a monumental, just a pivotal point in history. And like I said, if you think that we've seen anything yet, you are sadly mistaken, in my opinion. So let me know in the comments below, do you think that we need to see further consolidation, or whether or not this is different and whether or not we're going to see a massive rally? I think so. It's really going to depend on the S&P 500. You can check out my broader market video from earlier for some details on that. But it is entirely possible that we see some daily consolidation in SPY, but MJ hasn't really been reacting to any SPY weakness. And to be honest, it's actually been going quite inverse to the S&P 500 and the tech sector. So we'll continue to monitor those correlations. Thanks again for joining us on the Pursuit of Wealth for an MJ Sector review, and we'll see you tomorrow after market close.